Hi everyone, I'm Rosemarie from the Unfinished Lesson, and this is a quick win series. We've been taking a look at how to balance or finding a balance between routine and flexibility. In part 1, we took a look at setting up a warm-up routine. In part 2 of our series, you may have guessed, we're going to take a look at that end of lesson routine. And remember that whatever routine we choose, we need to stay flexible. So in the previous video, I talked about how life happens, whether it's things getting thrown off for us, for our students, or their families. Even when we have a routine, we need to have a backup plan. If you're wondering what I usually do for a backup plan, make sure you watch that part 1. I will have the link in the description below. All right, so setting that end of lesson routine. How do we do this? Well, think of it as similar to exit tickets in the classroom. So when I used to be a classroom teacher, one of the schools I worked at, this was really popular among the teachers, and it's something that we were encouraged to do. What happened is oftentimes I would write something on the board, whether it was a review question or just something to think about, and then they had a little slip of paper and they would hand it to me as they were leaving the classroom, and I would check it. If it was correct, they could go on. If it wasn't, they needed to go back and figure it out. Now, we don't need to necessarily do that in our music lessons. What we want to do is, just like our warm-up routines are about helping our students get into the headspace of being in lesson, this is a chance for us to help our students transition to out of lesson. We have students who love to talk. I was one of those. Lesson doesn't seem to start unless we have a routine with them, and lesson never seems to end. It's the lesson that never ends if we don't have a routine in place. They're the ones that are going to tell you everything about their week. Sorry for my piano teachers that I did this with. I now know how it feels. So, what are some things you can do to create an end of lesson routine? One of the things that I like to do is I actually have on their practice page, the most important thing I need to remember this week is, and that's where my student comes in. We do a quick review of this is what we covered in lesson and what you've agreed to work on this week, because they set their goals. And then I ask them, what's the most important thing to remember? My students understand that this important thing is, if life happens during the week and they get like no practice time, this is the one thing they're going to get done. Or it might be the thing that they're most likely to forget. Some of my students can be a little bit forgetful. They don't remember to read the whole practice page. You know the students I'm talking about. They're in every studio. So having something like this as your end of lesson routine really helps, because it makes sure that they think about what it is you've done in lesson and how that's going to look during the week. I would include specific praise. So I loved today how when you got stuck in that one little section, that you stopped, you looked, and you realized that that pattern had already happened. Or for students that love to stop and then start, you know what? I really liked how in Mary Had a Little Lamb, you were able to just keep going. I know you weren't comfortable with that, but that was massive progress today. And then I would, one of the questions I used to ask my students, taking a little break from it, remember we need some flexibility, I used to ask my students, do you have any questions, concerns, or interesting factoids to share? Now, the interesting factoids, most of my students didn't have any to share, but it would get a laugh out of them. And so you could have just a little phrase or question like that. And if they do have a question, it gives them a chance to quickly ask before either they go on their way or you go on your way, depending on whether they're going to you or you're coming to them. All right, so here's what I would like you to do before you go on with the rest of your day. Your goal is just to write out one activity that you can end your lessons with. It doesn't have to be long. In fact, we want to make sure that this is something that is 5 minutes or less. Once you have that written down, once you get to your planning, your long-term planning, and I'll be talking about that in another video in this series, then You'll end up changing it, but for your first lessons, you already know what it is you're going to do. All right, I hope you have an incredible day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.